don't think I'll make an attempt at doing a Scottish accent for the commentary on this one. I think I'd probably get arrested for some for some sort of crimes against accents if I did it. But what a fantastic couple of games these two teams provided over the course of the previous weekend, and of course we're going to talk about all of that and all of that good stuff to come across the duration of the next hour or so. Hello, everybody. We'll give everyone another moment or two, just before we get down to it. But I'm glad everybody's here. I'm just going to make sure everything's rocking and rolling. Make sure the things are working. All the tweets and stuff have gone out by the look of it, so that's kind of what I needed on that front. Let's just make sure that is working too. I hope folk are well. And everything's going okay. Like I said, we'll just give everyone another moment or two just before we get in. The thing I've discovered, slowly going along with this, is that the chat for me, you guys I think are running about a minute or so behind me when it comes to these bits and pieces. Before we start, yes, I am wearing my AFC Bournemouth hoodie. If there are any Liverpool fans in the chat or watching after the fact, 1-0. It officially means we're better than Man United, I think, or something like that. Either way, like I said, we're just making sure all of my bits and pieces have gone live whilst we do that. And then otherwise, we need to probably click that button, so that's all going to work as well. This is going to be very, very awkward in a second. The thing I need to have a think about before we start, and I'm interested to see what people's thoughts are in here. Game sheets for the national, because obviously we have a national focus, but are we liking working our way through the game sheets? Do we not like working our way through the game sheets? What do we feel about it? Thoughts in the chat. Either way, we better get rocking and rolling. Guys, gals, and the gender fluid and all beyond the binary, it is Wednesday night, it is 8 PM, and welcome back once again to the BOTW What's Current stream. My name is Anthony Russell, and we are here live, as we are every Wednesday night throughout the British hockey season, taking you through all the weird, wonderful, and wacky world of the National Ice Hockey League structure. We focus on the National Division. That is our bread and butter. That is our home port. But of course, we endeavour to go through absolutely every game that's been played across the National Division, as well as Division 1 and Division 2 in the north or in the south. Hope everybody is doing brilliantly this evening. Obviously, the end of the season is creeping nigh. We've got a few things, of course, that we need to talk about when it comes towards the end of the season. But before we crack on too much with the games that were played, a couple of bits of housekeeping before we get rocking and rolling. The first of those is, if you're watching live, or even if you're watching after the fact, hello. Please do the usual YouTube thingy. Like the video, subscribe down below, hit the notification bell on all those bits and pieces. This whole show, of course, here on YouTube. We used to be on Twitter Spaces. Do you remember the Twitter Spaces era? Who remembers the Twitter Spaces era? That was fun until Twitter Spaces stopped. Even Twitter Spaces, sorry, Twitter Live. That was even more crazy when the app just decided to not work anymore. And then we moved everything here to YouTube. But this whole show is not a monologue. It's a conversation. You, of course, have the lovely chat feature over here and everything, and of course you are more than welcome watching live or after the fact. Leave a comment, or if you're using the live chat, questions, comments, anything you want to chuck in as we're going along. But if you are watching and you're joining in, please do, of course, remember the golden rule here at BOTW. DBAD, don't be a dick, be respectful of other people's thoughts and feelings, and do please take a moment to share out the stream as we're rocking and rolling on your social media of choice. The other thing, of course, bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. That's the website where I am, 12 years minus about 9 days worth of writing about British hockey, mostly about the Bison. That's been that's the hockey I watch week in, week out, but we've got tons and tons of stuff there about the Bison. Player comings, player goings, match reports. Of course, the latest match report went up today from the weekend, the Bison's game against the Bees. A little bit of controversy thrown into that game as well. But there's tons of stuff there from across the thing. And of course, the other thing that's gone up live this week, and this is very much harking back to the roots of BOTW, is our Bison Player of the Year award. Now, you don't have to be a Bison fan to vote, but this is now the 8th iteration of this? 9th iteration of this. We've been doing it a while. But either way, you don't have to be a Bison fan to participate, but it is a Bison-specific award. Go head over to bannersonthewall.wordpress.com and check those out as well. Vote. You can nominate your Bison Player of the Year until 11:59 p.m. this coming Sunday. So even after the game against the Raiders, if you suddenly have a change of heart as to who you think might be there, by all means chuck one in. Or if you're watching live, chuck it in the live chat. Chuck it in the chat who your Bison Player of the Year is, and we will count it as a nomination towards the award. But as well as there, we've got our Hockey Story series. I've got the latest piece up there as well, the content question where I spoke to Old Man Rush, who of course is here on YouTube, and as well as Andrew Rocha, who's been playing in Finland about hockey and making content on YouTube. So do check out those things there. The old podcast back catalogue is there. Dice Hockey, a free to download game, is there for you as well. All that stuff is there at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. So we better crack on because, of course, our friends from Belfast are kicking off at 9 o'clock, and we want to be able to kind of lead in nice and smoothly. But I can see a few things in the chat already. Would help if spoil the stats were correct, though, Anthony. Saves Leeds making wrong assumptions about player milestones. Did our friend Joe Scutts at NIHL Stats make a confirmation either way on this? I think is the thing. I've not had a chance to check. I would love to understand how spoiled is so wrong, but is the official information for the EIHA, and if so, is this going to improve next year? Now, the big question there, Karen. Certainly at the moment, Sportle is mostly being used by the National Division, and the other divisions are meant to be going live next year, is the plan. They've now got a summer to kind of work that out. Certainly, from my understanding, is the stuff that was unofficial on nihlstats.wordpress.com, so Joe Scutts' website. If you're not familiar with Joe's work, check it out. He's also commentating for the Bees on their web streams this year. But it is now official. Joe's site has the official stats for the EIHA for men's hockey for this year. So if Joe's got it, it should be legit. Make sure you follow Joe on social media and bits and pieces of that, because he kind of tweets out when stuff is updated. That is the best way to keep up to date with things, because if nothing else, one team in the National Division, cough, Milton Keynes, don't put their game sheets up at the same time as everybody else, so you end up being behind on bits and pieces. I've discovered trying to write my write-ups, because the one thing I need to use is a game sheet to make sure I've got everything official, and I can't do that a lot of the time because Milton Keynes, for their home games, for reasons I don't know, don't upload them at the same time as everybody else. I get there on a Monday evening to write my write-up, and it's not there, which isn't super helpful. It'd be really appreciative of the Lightning if they could get on and do that on behalf of everybody else, and people like me who have to write league roundups. Love Joe's site. The man is a legend. He is indeed. He's very, 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 very lovely bloke. I'm very fortunate to know him. But either way, we probably need to get rocking and rolling. Talking about we'll talk about the National Division first, because we gave a lot of focus ahead of the Cup final to Northwell last week. Let's go back to what we know, what we do the majority of, which is the National Division. And things started off last Friday evening in the National between the Knights and the Seahawks. What's that? Sorry, Jamie. Me and so you both have on 99 and not 100. Oh, fair enough then. Fair enough. If you've both got it, then I will lean towards you, because that's 2 versus 1, Jamie, in that sense. But either way, Leeds and Hull kicked off things last Friday night, and with all due respect to the Seahawks, not an unsurprising result. Leeds win by 6 goals to 4, although credit to the Seahawks for making a pretty spirited comeback in the third period. They're tying the Knights 3-3. The problem is that they were a fair bit down by the end of the second period, 3-1 down. Goals. Mac Howlett again proving to be the scoring machine. A hat trick on the night for him, as well as goals for Cole Shudra, a couple for Matt Hayward as well, and Matt Hayward getting the empty net at the end. Emil Svek with 2, and Andre Themar and Sam Towner with the lone goal with a single goal for the Seahawks in that one. But of course, that started off a pretty important weekend for Leeds. They were 3-3 this previous weekend. Of course, as soon as I've gone to that, it's gone leaping backwards and forwards across the thing. But yes, having won on the Saturday evening, how did the Knights then subsequently do on the Saturday? They then had a long trip down to Swindon. And the Knights come up on the wrong end of this one, but they do get a point. The Wildcats beating the Knights in penalty shots. 2-1 win for Swindon. A big win for Swindon, actually, in terms of confidence in this latest round of the NEL Classico. Cole Shudra in the second period breaking the deadlock, but Russ Cowley with a power play goal in the third ties things up. And then in the shootout, goals from Balint Pakodzi and Colby Tower, the lone scoring in the shootout for that one. No goals for the Knights, interestingly, in that one. Rennie Mar managing to stand firm on that one. See you Sunday, mate. That's my plan, to see how Bison do this weekend. I've watched Bison versus Raiders before voting. Thank you, Andrew. A man, Andrew Day, of course, who does a variety of things. If you don't follow Andrew as well, do follow Andrew. Scores on the Doors with Day is must reading Twitter across weekends in the National Division. Of course, does the match night updates for the Raiders as well. Glad to see you'll be taking part in your Bison Player of the Year. So thank you very much for, as always, Andrew, being so considering what you're doing ahead of everything else. But yeah, so Leeds get 3 points from 4 out of their 2 games. So we better look back at the rest of Saturday night. And sorry for Andrew and his erstwhile hockey employers. But Hull managed to get a win at home against the Raiders. Having come close against Leeds the night before, the Seahawks then managed to get themselves into a good position with a 4-2 win, a 2-goal third period, putting the Seahawks over the line. The team's trading goals across the first period. Jake Sylvester and Emil Svek in the first, Alex Roberts and Andre Themar in the second, but then 2 goals sort of in the middle part of that third period, one from Sam Towner and one from the newly re-signed Nathan Salem, doing the business for them. Doing the business for the Seahawks there. And of course, unfortunately, Hull are mathematically out of the playoffs. They cannot make it. But the one thing that they can do is ruin people's weekends on the way out the door, which reminds me a little bit of Telford way back in the day, sort of 2012, 2013, where they were out of the playoffs for quite some time and they just spent the back end of the season just doing their absolute utmost to ruin everybody's day by picking up loads of wins, even though they were mathematically well out of things ahead of time. So we've covered those bits and pieces there. Let's talk about the game that's now got a write-up on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, because I managed to sit down and write it, and a slight bit of controversy in this one. Bison 5 Bs for after penalty shots, and like I say, if you want a good as good an in-depth breakdown as I could give, that's all over on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Do go check that out over there. But you know what? For 2 teams that have been wildly inconsistent, have fluctuated in terms of form and quality over the course of this year, this was a really good game of hockey. This was everything you wanted out of a derby game, kind of mushed into one. There were periods of really good play. There were periods of it being scrappy. There were periods of it being very intense. There were periods of it being very physical. For the fisticuff fans, you got some fisticuffs into the bargain as well. And then you got penalty shots with an absolute moment of utter, oh my days, what in the world is going on. For all of that, do go check out my report on bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. I kind of have my say about the penalty shot controversy during the shootout, and the short answer was they got it wrong, and then they kind of did their best to make it right. is the best way to kind of describe that one. Either way, though, goals in this one: Zach Milton, 2 from George Norcliffe, and 1 from Brendan Baird, which is a bit of an unlikely score, of course, for the Bison. His goal there, his shot taking a bit of a wild deflection, looping past Matt Smittle. Goals for the Bees in this one: Brendan Walcombe with 2, Ryan Webb, and a first goal in Bees colours for Harry Harkup. Delighted. And actually, you know what? In terms of Bison and Bees, you can make jokes about that all the time, and I will do frequently. But Harkup, to his credit, he put in a real shift on Saturday, as did Matt Smittle, and I was thoroughly impressed with both of them. Harkup in particular, like I say, who's one of these players who's kind of stepped up from the Jets. Young guy trying to make his way, and he was thoroughly impressive. The effort he put in this game, he was arguably, whilst obviously Walcombe scored the goals, in terms of the most impressive outskater performance from the Bees, I think Harkup was pretty up there, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he did in this game. I heard MK is waiting on full training with Spall, so not updating it and handing paper copy for the league update. You see, I wouldn't mind so much, Andrew, if every other team in the division wasn't doing it. I'm sure there's a really good reason why, and I'm just having a grumble because it just massively inconveniences me. But it strikes me as a bizarre, especially with a club like Milton Keynes, who are generally quite ahead of the curve on a lot of other things and are so far behind the curve with this. I find it odd. I just do find it a little bit strange. I'm sure that, like I say, I'm sure there's a really good reason for it, but it would be good, of all the clubs to be behind on this, Milton Keynes being the club that is behind, I find peculiar, if I'm 100% honest, because it's very unlike them to be behind the curve when it comes to these bits and pieces. Anyway, the rest of Saturday, then we won't speak about that gaping hole because it's now Wednesday, and that is still there. But of course, Peterborough winning 5-4 in overtime against Milton Keynes in the Thunderdome. Sam Thorpe with an equaliser. I want to say 5.6 seconds remaining in the game when they tied that one up. But an overtime winning goal from Alish Padalek does the business and takes the extra point back down the road to Peterborough. I find it really interesting as well because Peterborough's form has been a little bit wonky as of late, and of all the times to win in MK, of course, if you're a Peterborough fan, there is no bad time to win in Milton Keynes. But I'm interested as to whether this is MK having a wobble at the finish line as Leeds are about to put themselves over the line and out of sight, or is this just Peterborough just having played really, really well and just wanting to spoil everything? I venture it's kind of a little bit of both. 5.4 seconds. I was so close as well. But yeah, it's certainly, as Jamie mentions in the chat, there are 6-on-4 power play goal from Sam Thorpe to tie the game late on. But Peterborough get the win in the extras. And then from the last one from Saturday, the Puppy Bowl down in Bristol between the Bristol Pitbulls and the Sheffield Steel Dogs. And the Steel Dogs losing in Slough last weekend. They win in Bristol the following Saturday night and are 3-0 up by the end of the first period, thanks to Lee Bonner, Matt Bissonette and a goal from Ollie Turner. But then Bristol turn things on the head and they win the second period by 3-1. 2 from Nick Corrich and a goal from Mason Lipsey. But Jason Hewitt's goal has the Steel Dogs ahead late on. Corrich will complete his hat-trick and tie the game at 4-4 in the third before 2 goals from Matt Bissonette to complete his hat-trick, the last one going into the empty net with a second left to go. And that gives the Steel Dogs the point. And also, if nothing else, helps out the Bison because a win on Saturday for them and a defeat for the Pitbulls really did the Bison's chances no end of good, because then on Sunday the Bison managed to lay an absolute egg, finding themselves 7-0 in the hole at one stage away at Telford. Telford and Bison obviously battling out for that 7th spot. The Tigers 5-0 to the good at the end of the first period here, 7-0 up at the end of the second. The Bison do actually manage to win the third period by 3-2, but definitely not enough there. Not a good performance from the Herd, having had such a good Saturday evening there. Certainly like a pretty decent performance. And again, Rory Herman proving to be doing the business there with what I make as I'm skimming down a 2+2 night in a 9-3 win for Herman. He has certainly hit the ground running, and if he wasn't good enough for the Cardiff Devils, he's certainly proven that he was definitely good enough for the Tigers on that one. At Leeds on Friday, Knights best in the first, quite equal in the second, all over at 5-1 in the third, but the Seahawks were great to get to 5-4. Good timeout from the Knights, 6th for the empty netter at 6-4. MK had none of their two-way players apart from Jordan Headley playing. Norris suspended, as he should be, because that hit was ridiculous. And Malik Martelli injured. Now that is a shame. I was not aware Martelli was injured. Herman, 36 points in 15 games, which I make, what's that, like 2.1 something? 2.1, 2.2 points per game for Roy Herman. What a pickup he has been. But it's also as well that extra bit of depth that Telford really need as well, and guys like Tom Carlin and Gareth O'Flaherty, because Tom Carlin's been chipping in with points as well. But the Bison's result, like I say, 8th stays with the Basingstoke Bison at the moment, because Bristol, well, they run Peterborough close in Peterborough, but they don't manage to get the job done. Peterborough 2-1 up at the end of the first period. Duncan Spears and Alish Padalek beating away Morgan Clark Pizzo's goal to give them the lead. Jasper Forster makes it 3-1. But again, the Pitbulls come back and they tie things up. Elliot Lewis and then another goal on the weekend from Nick Corrich make it 3-3. But Jarvis Hunt with 2 goals, 1 in the second and a very late empty net power play goal in the third, do the business for Peterborough. And whilst the title is out of the reach of Slava Kulikov's side, they are very, very much keeping up pace. And for them, you think the target has to be to try and find a way to overcome MK and get into second place. With all due respect to the Phantoms, I'm not sure I want a big game against Romford over 2 legs, because that could be really, really problematic for them, especially given the Raiders are possible to kind of spring a surprise. If nothing else, they managed to get a decent 4-2 win on Sunday at home against the Swindon Wildcats. 2-2 at the end of the first period here. Colby Tower, Brandon Aliff, followed by another goal from Tower, and Aaron Connolly trading off goals there in the first period. The Raiders though get the lead in the second through Alex Roberts, and they keep it through the third. A power play goal from Mateo Gomacic makes it 4-2. The Cats do not find a way back, and the Raiders take the points. The Raiders are locked in for sixth now. They're not going to get caught by Telford or Basingstoke. I don't think they're going to overcome either Swindon or Peterborough, Swindon or Sheffield. Sorry, when it comes to the fourth and fifth spot. So the Raiders are pretty much just looking up the table and trying to figure out who it is they're going to be playing, because it's pretty much going to be a case of Milton Keynes or Peterborough, depending on who finishes there. But looking further up the table to a place that certainly Peterborough and definitely not the Raiders are going to get to is the Knights. A 4-2 win in Slough against the Bees. Another potential banana skin, and again the Bees run the Knights close. The Bees had a really good performance against them up in Leeds last weekend, running them very close, and they run them close again. The issue here though is they get the Knights kind of pull away a little bit too far. 3-1 to the Knights at the end of the first period, and the Knights were 3-0 to the good inside 4 minutes and 57 seconds. Kieran Brown, Tom Barry and Matt Howlett with the goals early on. Dom Gabai gets the Bees into the game. A scoreless second and a goal early in the third from Will Stead kind of makes it a bit more tense, but a late empty net goal from Matt Hayward, and another win for the Knights. 5 points from 6 across the weekend. Massive for the Knights, especially when it's compounded by the fact that Milton Keynes have an absolute mare up at Ice Sheffield against the Steel Dogs. A 6-2 win for Greg Wood's side. A scoreless first period, giving way to a 7-goal second period that saw the Steel Dogs 5-2 to the good. 3-2, of course, though, at one stage. Bobby Chamberlain and Liam Stewart with the goals for the Lightning early on, ahead of Lee Bonner, Alex Graham and Jason Hewitt. But then late goals in the second period, in fact 2 in the space of 20 seconds. One from Alex Graham and one from Jordan Boysa, making it 5-2 heading towards the third period. And ultimately, it was a case of the Steel Dogs of game management and holding the Lightning at bay. Boysa adds a second of the night to push them over the line and make sure that the Steel Dogs keep the points, and all the best tea in Yorkshire. So what does that mean in terms of the NIHL National Division table? Well, let's quickly have a scoot down, not scoot too far into the bits and pieces here. But there it is, the National Division table, and the Leeds Knights edge ever 7-2. It was 7-2. Why does it say 6-2 on the game sheet then, the useless sods? That's not bloody helpful. Who's missing the goal then? What have they done there? How have I managed to miss that one? That's pretty impressive. Jack Brummer. Another point for Boycer, though. Jamie, you'll know this answer this question. What's Boycer's points per game at the moment? He's not at 2, but he's got to be pretty high up at the moment in terms of his scoring. That's really annoying. That's really irritating. That's very, very irritating. But isn't that British hockey? There's a goal missing off the game sheet. Either way, it doesn't massively affect the league table. Because here we are. Although, MK now have a game in hand, as do Peterborough over the Leeds Knights. But the Knights are top. They have 87 points from 50 games. It is Leeds' title to lose, and it has been for quite some time. But they are edging ever closer to the line. All at this stage it is now is either a monumental collapse or just walking their way towards the finish. MK 78 from 49, Peterborough 74 from 49. The top 3 are pretty much locked in. Like I said, the big question is who finishes second out of the Lightning and the Phantoms. Sheffield are in 4th with 67 from 50. The Wildcats 62 from 51. 4th appears to be locked in for the Steel Dogs, and they will fancy their chances against Swindon. But Swindon will fancy their chances against Sheffield as well. We do know the Dogs like to come good at the end of the season. They were playoff champions last year for a reason, and that's sort of getting, as stereotypical as it sounds of Sheffield ice hockey, getting down and dirty in the trenches. And we don't have a game in hand. It says 49 here. What's Joe got on his thing? Should we have a look at Joe's website? Let's just do that instead. Let's pull up let's pull up Joe's and let's do this properly, shall we? When's the earliest they can be crowned winners? I venture it would probably be if Milton Keynes lost their games this weekend. There we go. It's 49 because of course the game sheet isn't there. That's better. Well, there we go. There's everything looking making much more sense. 50 games. Most people have played 50 games. There we go. Isn't that great? Bloody Sportle. Why do I use it? It's because it's the only way to look at game sheets because it's the one thing Joe's website doesn't do. But there we go. Let's try that again. Leeds 87 from 50, MK 79 from 50, Peterborough 76 from 50. What is that all? So for me, I venture the top three stay the same. I'm very, very interested to see whether Peterborough can catch MK. I don't think they do, and I think we get Peterborough versus Raiders in the playoffs, which would make sense. But yes, as someone has said there, yeah, Sunday if results go in their favour. If not, the weekend after this one, the Leeds Knights at home and home against the Basingstoke Bison. I don't care. I don't want them winning the league title on in Basingstoke. And ask Belfast what happens when you try that trick in our building as well. But yeah, Sheffield on 67, Swindon on 62. Swindon have played the game more. I don't think they're going to catch Sheffield now. You can't count the Steel Dogs out of the playoffs though. If I'm Tim Wallace, I know full well there is a really big chance that we're going to get Sheffield again in the playoffs. And if I'm Tim Wallace, I need to make a game plan. I need to make a game plan now for that one because I don't think it would go down very well if the Lightning lose again to the Steel Dogs in the playoffs, especially given how the final went last year. Raiders, like I say, they're locked in sixth. They are not going up. They are not going down. So they are pretty much, as like I said, I think it's Raiders and Phantoms. Telford are in seventh place. Bison, I have a game in hand, but the Bison have a 3-game weekend coming up this weekend, which will obviously I don't, as much as I love my club, they're not going to win 3 games on the bounce this weekend. You predict given their form this year. The Pitbulls then have played a game more than the Bison, but are 6 points behind, so it is very much advantage Basingstoke for that last playoff spot. Hull mathematically cannot qualify for the playoffs because the Bison have 38 points. The most Hull can get is 34. The Bees, though, are still mathematically not out of it, but if the Bison pick up a single point this weekend, then the Bees cannot qualify for the post-season. It's now a case for the Bees of trying to not get the wooden spoon and condemn Hull on their return to the to second tier hockey to being last place. There's the national done. Can't see Phantoms over Hall because they still have 2 games to play. 2 games to play still versus Steel Dogs. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Jamie. I think I'm with you on that. Part of me would be really, really interested in a Phantoms Tigers playoff series because I'd just be really interested with Herman in the lineup and the impact that he's had for Telford. I'm interested as to kind of what would happen in that kind of post-season setting, if you see what I mean. And I think there's a lot to be said for the impact that he's had there and that bit of confidence going into the post-season. I mean, it pretty much looks nailed on now that unless something goes awry, Leeds versus Basingstoke, which is going to be really annoying because the Bison have done really, really well about hanging around with Leeds this year. Not gotten the result, but they've always been very close. And I think this is kind of the problem with some of these games, particularly for top-end sides in a nervy thing. We saw what happened to Leeds last year with the playoffs. You'd think they would do better this year because they've kind of learnt as a group what to do. But yeah, Leeds versus Bison games end up much like the Leeds against the Bees was and Leeds against the Seahawks was. Maybe it's overconfidence, or maybe it's just not, or maybe it's just really, really good disruptive play by their opponents. But Leeds, if they want to win the playoffs, need to kind of against a team, whether it's Basingstoke, whether it's Bristol, whether it's Telford, a team that's lower down the table, and that Leeds have got almost 2.5 times the points of. They need to score, and they need to score early and put the game to bed. And I think if they can do that in the first leg, it's done pretty much early. Steel Dogs are iffy side. We're either brilliant or rubbish against them. Telford would probably beat us. Lovely bit of confidence there, Kev, from the Peterborough contingent in the room. So thanks very much for that one. But yeah, I mean, certainly at the moment, and the one thing we do get from Joe's website, if we just quickly pull up what we've got here, is that sort of oh no, that's it. Click the wrong thing there. Is playoff matchups at the moment. So it would. So if the playoff started today, I also feel two-legged format would help Leeds more than the group stage format. Can't see anyone in the lower half hanging with them for 2 legs. And yeah, that's probably where you're right. Whoever play MK will host the first leg on Good Friday, as MK only have 7 PM on Easter Saturday available. Indeed, we'll touch on the reason why for that one in a moment, Jamie. What's happened to the camera? Ooh, I'm moving around there. Let's click back. There we go, that's better. But yeah, the playoffs started today in the National Division. Leeds versus Basingstoke, which even as much as a Bison fan, my heart says one thing, my head very much says the other there. MK versus Telford, Peterborough Raiders, Sheffield Swindon, which we know has pretty much been nailed on for quite some time now. I mean, out of that, you'd be saying Leeds, MK, Peterborough, and I'd probably say Sheffield over Swindon. The thing for me is if Sheffield qualify for Coventry, I think they can win it. I'm not so certain that Swindon in a quarter final Swindon, if they get through in a quarter final against Leeds, they've beaten Leeds in penalty shots twice this year. There's so many permutations, isn't it? It's great, but that's why we love it. The one thing, of course, we do need to talk about is coming this weekend, and I know we normally do the fixtures at the end, but will talk about it now, which is the fact that the first leg of the National Cup final is upcoming this Friday evening. So the next 2 Fridays, we have the first leg this weekend and the second leg the weekend after. We are in Peterborough this Friday night, 7:30 PM face-off in Breton. The Peterborough Phantoms and the Leeds Knights in the first leg of the NIHL National Division Cup final. Now, I suppose I'll ask the question in chat, and I'll probably ask the question during the week, but not let's ask the question, who wins Friday, and then who wins the Cup? There will probably be the big question. For me, this is going to be incredibly close, and in my head, I think we kind of almost end up with a very, very similar situation to what we got with the Northern Cup final that we'll talk about in a minute. Which is, I think we probably end up with a draw in Peterborough, because I think Peterborough on home ice are going to be a very, very different kettle of fish. And all things considered, I think Peterborough need the result here, because I think for them it's going to be much, much tougher to get a result in Leeds against them. But for me, it's probably going to end up a tie, maybe 2-2, 3-3. For then Leeds to take at home. I don't know whether Peterborough, if they win, they're not winning by more than a goal. Especially after that. There will be a response after that massive, massive thumping that Leeds gave Peterborough at home. But if Peterborough win by more than 2 goals, I'd be very, very, very surprised. We've beaten them in regulation this year too. In Leeds too. They probably destroy us on a bigger pad like Coventry though. Maybe, with all that speed. Swindon have a 4-2 head-to-head lead over the Dogs this season. The Dogs are a different prospect in the playoffs, Jamie. There's the problem. Phantoms winning 4-3 before the Knights win 6-2. I can always rely on you, Jamie, for a really, really specific prediction. So thank you very much for that. I'm interested to hear what other people say. Either way, should be a lot of fun. A big weekend for both sides. And as far as I'm aware, it's a 3-game weekend for the Phantoms this weekend as a result, because I believe they're away against the Raiders and then home against Sheffield. I'll check the fixtures properly. In a minute, because of course we'll look at the fixtures in depth towards the end of the show. Either way, we do need to crack on, and we need to talk about the results from the North, because if nothing else, we know there are very much Kings of the North now, and it is the Solway Sharks. Not only dealing with a very, very bizarre situation on Friday in the first leg of the Cup final, but then winning the Cup and winning the league whilst they were playing in the Cup final, which was pretty impressive. 5-5 in the first leg between the Sharks and the Stars in Dumfries on Friday evening. Slight controversy caused in this game. An error on the team sheet and the game sheet resulted in Billingham player Sean Galloway being removed from the game at the 50-minute mark, despite being 1+1 because it wasn't listed on the game sheet. Now, as it turns out, there was an error made. On both sides of the equation. The NIHL looked at the situation, allowed the result to stand, and then everything moved into Saturday. And the absolute ding dong of a game that we got in Billingham on Saturday evening, and the Solway Sharks down a goal in the last minute. They score with about 27 seconds to go, and then win on penalty shots. Coupled with the fact that, as we can see here from the screen, that Whitley lost at home earlier in the day, to Blackburn, and the earlier face-off meant that the title was Solway's by the middle of the third period. So Solway end up beating Billingham, and they get 2 trophies by the end of Saturday night. How they then managed to win 9-1 the next day at home against Widnes without having about 30 hangovers amongst a team of 20 men, I have absolutely no idea. Should be said though, however, massive credit to the Billingham Stars, and I did tweet this out during the week. But Billingham, as an organisation last year, said that they were in the middle of something of a rebuild. They were going to bleed in lots more youngsters, and they were looking to try and build themselves back up. To build yourself back up, and by the end of the second season of that process, to be in the cup final and to run arguably the best side at this level in the country to the very, very death, 125 minutes of hockey could not separate these two sides, and to be separated on penalty shots. If this is Billingham still on their way up, the Billingham Stars are going to do absolute bits in the next couple of years if they can keep this level of momentum going in North 1. Either way, elsewhere on Saturday, as we said, Whitley losing to Blackburn, which hands the title to Martin Grubb and the Solway Sharks, and a good 3-2 win in overtime for the Deeside Dragons over the Solihull Barons. It was a good weekend in all for Blackburn. They got a 4-point weekend, a 5-0 win over the Sheffield Scimitars on Sunday evening. It was pretty decent for them. Whitley, well, left to lick their wounds again after another league title gone north of the border, but they win 3-1 in Deeside against the Dragons. And Billingham, well, they get something out of the weekend. They do get an extra 2 points on the board. They beat the Solihull Barons by 2-1 at Hobbsmoat Road on Sunday. What that leaves us with then is a North 1 table that looks like this. The Solway Sharks are there, crowned as champions of North 1 for yet another year. Billingham sit in second place at the moment though. They have 44 from 30, and Whitley a point behind, 43 from 29. So the Warriors winning that game in hand would take them back into second spot. Solihull 36 from 28 in fourth. Widnes 32 from 30 in fifth place after their thumping they got from Solway. Deeside 25 from 28, so a couple of games in hand, but they can't catch Widnes with that points total. Blackburn 24 from 30. Nottingham then, because of results elsewhere and Sheffield's loss, are in the playoffs, but of course we still don't have any word about what's happening with these games. You know, the results have been awarded to the other teams. Are Nottingham being docked points? Are Whitley being docked points for moving their game against Nottingham? Nothing has been made clear, but at the moment, mathematically, unless there is a points deduction that comes out of nowhere, the Nottingham Lions will play the Solway Sharks in the post-season. So if we scroll up quickly, then we'd see what the playoffs look like in North 1. Solway would play Nottingham, Billingham, Blackburn, Whitley, Deeside, which should be a cracking couple of games, and Solihull versus Widnes. That could be an absolute sleeper tie across the entire NIHL for absolutely brilliant looking games. Can't be hungover on Sunday night if you're still drunk. True. Very true. Martin Grubb was very forthright in his views on joining the National League on 4,000 and counting. I agree with what he said. Martin was very forthright in his views when I interviewed him at the at Coventry weekend last year as well, Jamie. He's been very, very set on the fact he wants his side to join the league. What I'm interested in is, will the club as a whole need to make that decision? It's not just a Martin decision there. Either way, then we quickly drop down south to South 1, and something of a surprise result on the weekend, but certainly we'll look at Saturday first. Solent, of course, crowned in second place for yet another year. They squeak out a 3-2 win down in Kent against the Invicta Dynamos, and Chelmsford win the local derby. They win by 5-3 at Sapphire Ice and Leisure against the Romford Junior Raiders. A 4-point weekend actually for the Raiders as well. They win 5-2 away at Milton Keynes, who are pretty much now confirmed as being bottom and having to face Streatham in the playoffs. Chelmsford, though, they get a 4-point weekend too with a 7-2 win against Streatham. Now, a very much below strength Streatham side. A couple of guys not playing in this one as guys start to get rested for the playoffs. But a 4-point weekend is a 4-point weekend, and what I believe is Chelmsford's last game of the regular season, heading towards playoffs. In fact, as I scroll down here, no, they've got all they've got left is the cup final. So Chelmsford's league season finishes with a 7-2 win against the league champions. The other result then from Sunday, a good win for Invicta against Oxford. The Dynamos win by 8-5 over in Oxford. Which means we then have a quick look at the South One table, and there it is, already confirmed quite some time ago now. Streatham are champions, 46 from 25. Solent have 41 from 26. Invicta are in third. They have 29 from 27. At the moment, Chelmsford sit in fourth place. They have finished their league campaign. They have 29 points from their 28 games. But Slough have 27 from 26. So 2 games in hand. The Jets could very much push themselves over the line and get themselves towards third place when everything shakes its way out. Romford, 23 from 26, are probably likely to stay where they are. They could, though, be caught by Oxford, who have 22 from 26. The Stars might fancy their chances more against the Dynamos, although that result from Sunday does prove the Dynamos will probably feel like they have to measure with them. The MK Thunder, they are absolutely locked in, guaranteed to face Streatham in the playoffs. It is 9 points from 26 for the Thunder. At the moment, as it stands then, Solent versus MK, Solent versus Oxford, Invicta versus Romford, Chelmsford versus Slough. I venture that's likely to change. Although Chelmsford versus Slough will be an absolute humdinger of a playoff tie. Good job, Chelmsford have a cup final, otherwise to be well out of match practice for the playoffs. Crazy scheduling, very, very much so. Those games are coming up as well before too long for the Chieftains and the Dynamos. Looking forward to Solway versus Streatham in commentary. I think Streatham might get their revenge. Certainly, I know it is very much in the minds of Streatham. As I tweeted out during the week, it's repeat or redemption. Will Streatham manage to pull their way into this one? If they have Vanya Antonov and Ryan Watt, it is a very, very different kettle of fish. But you've seen what that Solway team can do with its back against the wall. We're then headed to North 2. Because, of course, we know that 3 teams are already guaranteed for the playoffs. The Hull Jets are one of them. They're currently top of the table still. With their 3-1 win over Coventry on Saturday night certainly helped them there. And the other 2 sides played each other on Saturday. Telford a 6-1 win over the Sutton Sting, which given the Sting are qualified for the playoffs, won't worry them a bit. A result that took everybody a little while to get a hold of. What the hell has happened there? That's just leapt down to the bottom for absolutely zero reason at all. But the Sheffield Titans with a 6-3 win over the Bradford Bulldogs, as Sheffield with very much an outside chance of making the postseason in that 4th spot that is still open. Sunday then, Sutton get a 0-point weekend. Hull do the business and win by 5-3 there. And the Nottingham Lions could not stop the march of the Tigers either. An 8-0 win for the Telford over at the small pad at the NIC. However, it's still very much advantage Jets in the race for the North 2 title. 46 from 25 for the Jets, 44 from 25 for the Tigers, who need the Jets to slip up somewhere. The Sting, they have qualified 29 points from 25 games. They will play in the postseason, and then as we know, it's basically 3 teams playing for 1 spot, and it is advantage Altrincham in it. 26 from 26 for the Aces in 4th, 22 from 26 for the Blaze in 5th. The Titans now I think mathematically they've got to be pretty close. Actually, no, yeah, we can see there 27 points is the maximum the Titans get. The Aces need 1 point to eliminate them from contention. The Titans have played 24 games. The Blaze need the Aces to lose this weekend, and they need to get points. Bradford are out of it mathematically, 15 from 24. The Lions, 11 from 25, are bottom of North 2. And then into the biggest division, all things considered, which is South. Quite literally the biggest division, South 2. Why is that again leapt up out of nowhere when I didn't really want it to? Either way, though, as we know from weeks past, this South 2 title is pretty much going to one of three places. It's either going to Guildford, Haringey, or Bristol, we're pretty much certain of. And Haringey's 4-2 win over Invicta at the weekend will certainly help them on that one, because as we know, Bristol have all of these games in hand. Their 5-3 win on Saturday against the Stretton Blackhawks on the high road was certainly something that was very, very much needed for them, because they know, the Pitbulls know, if they run the table, they're league champions. Elsewhere on Saturday, a 6-0 win for the Peterborough Phantoms against the Chelmsford Warriors in Chelmsford, and another win for the Solent Junior Devils. They win 4-3 in overtime against Lee Valley, in a result that will probably, unfortunately, condemn the Lions to the bottom spot in NIHL 2 South for yet another year. On Sunday then, the rarest of all rarities, a 4-point weekend for the Solent Junior Devils. They win 6-2 in Gosport against the Basingstoke Buffalo in what's been a really bizarre year for the Buffalo, where they've tried very hard and just not gotten any results anywhere at all. The Stretton Blackhawks, they get a 0-point weekend as Guildford Phoenix get a 6-1 win on the high road. Back-to-back home defeats for the Blackhawks in the space of 2 days is definitely not the sort of form that you want heading towards the postseason. But Guildford, they needed the win, and they definitely need to try and keep pace and hope Bristol slip up somewhere. And they were certainly run close on Sunday in their local derby against the Swindon Wildcats, but a 7-6 win in regulation for the Pitbulls keeps them on pace. Which means, looking at the table, as and when it wants to load, we now officially have 7 sides qualified for the postseason in South 2. There was only one spot left, but as we can see, the title race is the thing that is really going to keep the tongues wagging, and it is a 3-team race. Guildford sit top, 41 from 24, but they have now, as far as I'm aware, completed all of their games for the regular season. Let's just quickly check that. I don't believe Guildford have any more. They do not. Guildford are done. So Guildford now can only sit and wait as it comes down to it. Haringey have 37 from 23. So the maximum they can get is 39. So the Huskies are not going to win that league title. But Bristol are there. Run the table for the Bristol Pitbulls, and they are champions of South 2. And will shatter Guildford's hopes of another Grand Slam. Invicta in fourth, 31 from 23. Peterborough 31 from 22. Streatham 28 from 22. So having a 0-point weekend hasn't impacted them. They have qualified for the postseason. Swindon Wildcats have 23 from 21, and they are officially over the line. The Wildcats will play in the postseason. 8th place at the moment then is the Cardiff Fire. They have 18 from 21. They are on the inside, with Chelmsford 15 from 21 from the looking out. Look from the outside looking in. Oxford have 14 from 23. It's going to take an awful lot now for them to make the postseason. Solent have 9 from 22. Basingstoke now down into 12th place, 8 from 22. Lee Valley have 3 from 19. The maximum they could get is 13 points. So it's pretty much now a 2-horse race for that final playoff spot. The Fire and the Warriors are the two sides who are going to be duking it out for that last playoff spot. Certainly for the Warriors, they don't appear to play each other, although there is a lot of to-be-confirmed games here, mostly Lee Valley home ones. So we're going to see what happens there. Chelmsford, of course, could potentially get some points out of that if that game is voided, but there's a fair few games here that have not been decided as to what's going to happen with them in South 2. And there we go then. We've got all the way through every game across from the last weekend across the NIHL, National Division, Division 1 and Division 2. Questions, comments, anything anybody wants to chuck in the chat. There's certainly a lot there. I need to have some water and actually remember to breathe. Just having a quick look at South 2 though, just because there's obviously a lot more playoff permutations there. So if everything happened today, let's have a quick look at, let's quickly pull that table up there. Who would we have South 2 playoff wise? Guildford versus Cardiff, Haringey versus Swindon, Bristol, Streatham, Invicta, Peterborough if it started today, although I venture as an absolute minimum Bristol are going to be into second place, and they would potentially, you get a Bristol versus Swindon playoff quarter-final series, which could be pretty impressive. Haringey, you'd venture are going to be either Swindon or Streatham either way. Invicta versus Peterborough could be a very, very interesting tie between those two second sides. Very, very, obviously lots of great permutations there. But now it is all eyes on the Bristol Pitbulls in South 2 as to who is going to run the table. Can they do it? Can they win all of those remaining games and find a way to get past everybody? But yeah, questions, comments, anything anybody wants to chuck into the discussion before we get to the end of everything. Deary me. Ooh. I don't know why when I'm doing this my computer just leaps up and down. Yes, that's the one thing we do need to do, as we've talked about it. We've got the playoff venues confirmed for the remaining NIHL playoff weekends. Interested to hear people's thoughts about this, because of course we have had a couple of changes. So the in Division 2 we have our northern weekend and our southern weekend, and in Division 2 the two weekends take place the first weekend of April. So the 1st and 2nd of April we'll see the Division 2 North weekend take place at Planet Ice Widnes, and which of course we know is going to be that 4-team affair. No playoff quarterfinals in North 2, but in South 2 everybody heads to the capital. Alexandra Palace will host the South 2 weekend, and what could potentially see either yet another Grand Slam in South 2. Will Haringey prove to be the big dogs on home ice? Could Bristol potentially run the table and win all of the trophies? That remains to be seen. The following weekend then, sort of across Easter, the 8th, the 9th and the 10th of April, what we get is we get the Division 1 weekends. Saturday 8th and Sunday the 9th, we'll see the North 1 weekend take place in Altrincham, so just out Planet Ice Altrincham, just outside of Manchester. Obviously held in Leeds last year. Ice availability an issue this time, so Manchester is going to play host to this one. Could be a really, really fascinating weekend. The Solway Sharks, of course, are on course. They have 2 of the 4 trophies needed for their Grand Slam. Will Billingham play spoilers? Will Whitley play spoilers? Who will be the 4th team in that equation? Could Solihull spring a surprise? Could Widnes potentially spring a surprise or anything like that? Whitley have been very, very up and down as of late. If they end up in a 2-legged affair with the Deeside Dragons, could Deeside sneak their way to Altrincham? Could they get their way if Deeside have to play Billingham? Do they trip Billingham up? There's lots of great permutations in North 1 as to what could happen there. And then, because of ice availability, the southern weekend is Sunday the 9th and Monday the 10th of April. So Easter Sunday and the Bank Holiday Monday for South 1 at Planet Ice Milton Keynes, which is where the southern weekend was held last time out. Of course, Streatham, the Grand Slam is gone for Streatham due to their indiscretion with the Cup at the beginning of the year, but Streatham have a couple of things in mind, and that is win as much as humanly possible, and they will not be wanting to look past any of the teams left in their division. It could be Solent. It could well be. Could Chelmsford spring a surprise? Invicta, Slough. Like I said, Slough look fantastic, and they could do a lot of dangerous work in the right way at the right time. Your money would probably be towards Streatham, but you don't want to. Like I say, if Streatham look past any of the teams that could potentially make that weekend, because with all due respect to the MK Thunder, I don't have the Thunder making this weekend. And then ultimately, could Streatham be heading into that Coventry weekend on a downer? Could Solway be heading into that weekend on a downer? Could both of them lose and both league champions not have a playoff title to go with it? And then, of course, the whole NIHL season comes to something of a conclusion, because the North 2 Cup final is now after playoffs for them. But it all ends at the weekend of the 15th and 16th of April at the Coventry Sky Dome, the NIHL Final 4 weekend, where the National Division playoffs will be decided. And then Sunday the 16th, you get the NIHL 1 Division 1 national title game, Solway versus Streatham 2, repeat or redemption. And then on Sunday afternoon, the NIHL National Division playoff final. Can the Steel Dogs make it back to Coventry and defend their title? Will Leeds be the all-conquering monolith this year and do a Grand Slam? Can MK realise some of that potential that they just don't seem to get over the line and do? Can Peterborough spring a surprise? Or will Swindon sneak away to the weekend? Can Romford overturn a potential playoff tie? with Peterborough. Do Telford or Basingstoke spring a surprise? Do Bristol sneak in the back door and cause mayhem? There are lots of great permutations left to be done. As you can imagine, I've put in for my media credentials for Coventry weekend because my wife said to me, if I try to go to witness, I will be shot. So I won't be doing that. However, lots of exciting things. I'm sure lots of people have got their hotels and their bits and pieces sorted for Coventry weekend. It's going to be amazing. They might have some hockey cards for people if they are interested in such things. So we can have lots of fun with that. But yeah, tons and tons of stuff. Either way, we're at 5 to 8, and like I said, our friends from the north of Ireland are going live in a couple of minutes. So we'll say questions, comments, anything anybody else kind of wants to chuck in here, what they're kind of looking for, before we quickly go through the fixtures across the various divisions for this weekend. So get your bits in the chat whilst we quickly go through the fixtures for this upcoming weekend. And as we've said already, it starts in the National Division this coming Friday. 2 games actually on Friday. One in the league, which is between the Swindon Wildcats and the Basingstoke Bison. The Bison with that 3-game weekend this weekend. That's a league fixture that starts at 7:30. And at the same time, the first leg of the NIHL National Division Cup final between the Peterborough Phantoms and the Leeds Knights. Into Saturday the 18th then, Bristol take on Basingstoke at 7, Leeds take on Swindon at 6:30, MK take on Telford at 7 p.m. Interested with Telford's form as to how that goes. 5:15 over in Romford for the Raiders against the Phantoms, and the Sheffield Steel Dogs at a 7:30 p.m. face-off against the Bees. On Sunday then, the game that was cancelled by the Bison due to sickness earlier in the year, they take on the Raiders at 5:30 p.m. on Mother's Day. The Bees have a 5 p.m. date with the MK Lightning. Hull take on Bristol at the world's most versatile arena in a game in a day that the Bison need to win because they cannot rely on Bristol or Hull particularly to do them any favours against Bristol. Peterborough take on Sheffield at 5:30 and a 6 p.m. face-off, as is the norm in Telford, for the Tigers against the Knights. In North 1 then, this weekend, as we say, we know the title is already done and dusted, which thankfully is a good thing for the Sheffield Scimitars. They have to travel to Dumfries on Saturday to take on the Solway Sharks at 7. Billingham play Solihull at the Forum at 5:30 p.m. On Sunday, it's a 6 p.m. face-off for the Blackburn Hawks against the Widnes Wild. Deeside take on Nottingham at 5:15. Sheffield take on Whitley at 5:10, so not a fun weekend for the Scimitars. A 5:30 p.m. face-off for the Solihull Barons. They take on Solway. In South 1 then, with playoff positions still to be played for, and a tasty game on Saturday at the Hangar between the Slough Jets and the Solent Devils. That's a 6:30 p.m. face-off. Streatham take on the Oxford City Stars at 5:30 on the High Road, as Streatham look to build towards retaining their playoff title in the South. On Sunday, 5:15 p.m. face-off in Kent. Invicta take on Streatham. A 6:45 p.m. face-off at the Thunderdome between MK and Romford. Oxford take on Slough at 6:15. In North 2 then, Bradford could potentially kill Coventry's playoff chances. The Bulldogs take on the Blaze at 4:45 p.m. Hull take on Sheffield at 5:30 at the world's most versatile arena. And then a big game between the Sutton Sting and the Altrincham Aces. If the Aces win, they qualify for the playoff weekend, and the Blaze and the Titans will be done. On Sunday then, the Aces will get another chance. If they don't win on Saturday, they can do it again on Sunday as they take on the Sting in Altrincham at 4:15. A 7 p.m. face-off at the Sky Dome between the Blaze and the Bulldogs. The Nottingham Lions take on the Hull Jets, having had Telford last weekend. It's not been a fun home series recently for the Lions, but yes, 7:15 on the small pad at the NIC for the Lions and the Jets in North 2. In South 2 then on Saturday, as we know, Cardiff looking to hold on to that playoff spot. They have the Solent Junior Devils coming off the back of their first 4-point weekends. That's 6:45 down in Cardiff Bay. Invicta take on Chelmsford. Big local derby and a big game for the Warriors because a win for them and a loss for Cardiff would get them very much in the playoff picture. Oxford take on Swindon at 6:15. Peterborough take on Haringey in what could be take on Haringey at 6:30 p.m. So Haringey, of course, need to get some results there. Just to at least make themselves locked in for second, as we know they can't win the title now. Sunday, no face-off time confirmed for the Basingstoke Buffalo, but they have a game against the Cardiff Fire. It'll either be 4:30 or 6 o'clock if we confirm it, we'll let you know. Bristol take on Chelmsford at 5 p.m. Not the best of times to be playing the Warriors if you're the Pitbulls, because the Pitbulls need to win. And what is officially the last confirmed game on at the moment, Streatham versus Swindon, 6:30 p.m. on the High Road. Lee Valley have 5 games there unconfirmed in terms of when they're going to be played. Lightning retire the 61 jersey on Saturday for Ross Bowers. Yeah, Roscoe has given great service to MK. Remember him in Basingstoke very briefly when he was in the Elite League. Lots of fun. Really enjoyed it. Really pleased for him because he's obviously given quite a lot to MK hockey, and I'm really delighted that he's managed to do something from that. Just checking there's no other news. He's just frantically pressing the button. Doesn't appear like there's been anything else. Obviously, Rennie Marr re-signed in Swindon. More like 2 p.m, Anthony, with Bison face-off at 5:30. Who knows at this rate? They're impossible to kind of figure out at this point. That's a very good point. I'm so used to them facing off at either 4:30 or 6 on a Sunday that it completely blanked my brain as to when they would actually face off. I do wonder whether they would have moved that back to the Saturday, but who knows on that one. Pass on that. But yeah, the Buffalo have not been great at confirming their face-off times this year. I really hope they kind of sort of settle that down next year and make things a lot more easier. Last call, everybody. I think is probably the thing there, because like I say, we've hit the 9 o'clock mark. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the little bit of Solway versus Billingham at the top of the show. If you haven't already, do make sure that you go and check out Solway Sharks TV on YouTube to make sure you can watch their bits and pieces. Either way, though, I think we are going to call it there. Bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, your number one source for everything related to the Basingstoke Bison player comings, player goings, match reports with our Running with the Herd series. The latest one, of course, is there on the website now. If you want to go and check it out from our game against the Bees. Of course, the back catalogue of the old BOTW podcast is there, and our Hockey Stories series, long form pieces of content, long form pieces about all things. We go back into from the 19th century to the present day, players, referees. Our latest one there, of course, about the content question, but we go from the NIHL all the way up to the NHL. If you like long form stories about people's involvement with hockey, Hockey Stories is definitely the thing for you. And of course, if you want your hockey on your table at home, Dice Hockey is there. It's free to download. It's a tabletop game. It's easy to play with a few bits and pieces you can knock around the house. It's free to download, but if you do enjoy it, please do consider donating some money to Parkinson's UK. My dad has Parkinson's. Parkinson's sucks. It really make me happy if we could find a cure for it. So please do that. A ton of stuff at bannersonthewall.wordpress.com. Facebook.com/bannersonthewall. If you like your news coming through your Facebook feed and bits and pieces like that, make sure to go over and like the page. Like I say, randomly we jumped like 400 people in the last year on the Facebook page, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, if you like getting the news through your Facebook feed, if it goes on the website, it will come in through the Facebook feed and you can catch up with all those bits, as well as the links for this too. Twitter is at BannersOTW. That's the best place to kind of keep tabs with me and all the things I'm doing. Sort of a running, rolling commentary, sometimes serious, sometimes and most of the time definitely not, about the NIHL and world hockey as it kind of comes along. And of course, there's what you're watching now, the BOTW What's Current stream, where we go through absolutely everything across the National Division, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m, all the way through to the end of the season, and we'll probably go a little bit beyond as well. We'll certainly go beyond. We'll certainly be here at least until the week after the playoff weekend in Coventry to kind of go through all the bits and pieces that have happened across the NIHL. If you haven't already on YouTube, do like, subscribe, share, do all of those wonderful bits. It just means that we can get more eyes on what's happening and get more people kind of checking out the NIHL, which is really good, because there's tons of Elite League stuff and not much NIHL stuff. But yeah, NIHL bits and pieces, Sharks TV, Drop the Puck, the Wildcast, anywhere you can find stuff, just like check stuff out, and if you enjoy stuff, share stuff. That's the important point. Either way, done for another week, and there's a cup final in the National Division, and everything is starting to get very dicey. We've got 2 league champions already. We could potentially have another couple before too long as well. We might have one this coming Sunday in the National Division if things go the way of the Leeds Knights, but it remains to be seen. It'll be a hell of a weekend. Although it wouldn't be 2 trophies in 2 days. No one's quite as good as Solway when it comes to that level of thing. But either way, hopefully you're enjoying your hockey. Hopefully you are. Be happy. And if you can't be happy, then please do be safe. As my friend Scotty Watts would say, take care of yourself and somebody else. For bannersonthewall.wordpress.com, this is Anthony Russell saying stay safe And so long till next time. Hopefully, the Bison can at least get 3 or 4 points out of this weekend, because otherwise it's going to get pretty dicey for us. But that's hockey. Got to earn it. Have a good weekend, everybody.